Welcome to this week's episode of The Obscurity of Maximum Security with Kara Phillip and most importantly, Mike Johnson. So last week, we kind of left me on a cliffhanger. I don't know about you, but about roasting coffee in the toilet.
Right. We were talking about the commissary and items that they could buy. And they could buy, I guess it'd be like instant coffee or whatever it was. And they could also buy Pringles. Okay, now, the reason I know, you're like, what a correlation there.
Yeah.
Well, next time you're in the grocery store, grab a can of Pringles, turn it upside down. The bottom is like a tin plate, like a metallic plate.
It is.
Well, what they used, of course, they'd eat the Pringles. And then what they used the Pringles can for was they'd make coffee in it. And they would set a fire in the toilet with like magazine, newspaper pages, toilet paper, and they would fix the coffee in the Pringles can, and they'd tear a piece of sheet, put a handle on the can, on the top of it, and then hold the Pringles can over the fire in the toilet. And they would heat other things up that way too.
Okay.
And this is the guys that didn't have two of the things that you could have. You could have a small crock pot.
Oh.
Hot pot.
This is wild how many things they're allowed to have. I'm still tripped out about this fire they can have.
Yeah, could, inmate back then could have a small little hot pot, the ones I'm talking about.
And they have electricity.
You plug them in, right.
Okay.
And what they call a stinger. You can get them at Walmart. What a stinger is, it's like a short extension cord, and on the end of it is a metal coil. And it could heat up liquids like in a cup or whatever.
This sounds so dangerous.
Yeah, you put the metal coil in the cup of water.
Okay.
Plug it in. There's no on-off switch or nothing. And it would heat the water.
This is still a thing?
You could go, yeah, well, I saw them at Walmart.
I'm also going to Google this.
Yeah,
this just seems so dangerous.
They called them a stinger, but I think the real name is immersion.
Okay.
Yeah, look up immersion something.
Okay, it just sounds very dangerous.
Immersion heater. I can't.
Freaked out by it.
But the inmates called them stingers. So anyway, now you had to remember. Now you had to make sure you put the coil in the cup of water before you plugged it in. Because if you plugged it in and the coil was not in the water, you wrecked it because it would go. It'd like melt.
That's what I'm saying. It's so dangerous.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
But anyway, what else could they get?
Okay, so wait, why were they cooking in the Pringles? Because it made the coffee, it heated up the coffee.
Yeah, because they didn't have any other way to heat it up. If they didn't have a stinger and they didn't have like a hot pot, then they would use Pringles. The Pringles can make the coffee in it, and they'd heat it up over.
So they could have just like little open fires.
Well,
in the toilet.
They didn't like do it publicly in front of you.
But you wouldn't even realize.
You'd catch them sometimes, and what are you going to do?
Because
they flush the toilet. That's it. You have no evidence.
But also they're already having lighters or whatever because of cigarettes.
They could have matches, but not lighters.
Okay, so but they already are allowed to make fire. I'm just tripped out by they can make fire, smoke cigarettes inside.
Yeah. Oh, everybody did
and
that.
And have a little campfire.
In the
essentially,
toilet,
because if you had a little fire in the toilet now in any indoor building, jail, prison, anything, you'd be very aware, and we're all leaving the building. They're sending all the employees out. It's a fire drill or a fire, alarm.
A different animal in those days,
what?
I guess.
Crazy. I always say I'm always tripped. I tell people at work, I say they didn't have cameras then. They didn't know, what was happening. And I'm blown away by that. All the differences all the time.
But there's more.
There's more.
All right, tobacco products. We mentioned that the state made cigarettes, Pyramids, and Southern Lights.
Okay.
And at the commissary, the inmates could buy name brand cigarettes like Marlboros or whatever. Mm-hmm. There was a couple different brands. I remember Marlboros. That always seemed to be a real popular.
Still are.
And but also they could buy loose tobacco.
Okay.
Brand name Bugler. Mm-hmm. You can still get
it.
Okay. And come in a little round thing like Quaker Oats used to come in. Mm-hmm. And it had rolling papers in there. Well, what happened was the inmates always seemed to run out of the rolling papers before they ran out of the tobacco. Reasonable. So what they did was, we had a lot of religious people coming through, and they all had those little pocket New Testaments. So an inmate would, hey, could I have a New Testament? When they come in, they'd have like a sack of them, and here you go, my son.
They were happy to share.
They'd keep walking, and the inmate and roll up a smoke with a page from the New Testament, and they called those holy rollers.
So even the little tiny Bibles, or that thin Bible paper?
Yeah, the little ones, the
ones?
little New Testament.
And that's just the perfect size, isn't it?
Right.
You don't even.
Yeah, that's what they, that's what they do if they ran out of rolling papers for their bugler tobacco. So, anyway, continuing along, inmates could have back then, they could have a 12-inch black and white or a 13-inch color TV. They could have a radio. They could not have a cassette player because a cassette player, the workings inside that turns they could take that and turn it into a tattoo gun, and tattoos were not allowed.
Prison tattoos. I just would have assumed because a tape, a cassette, could easily smuggle in some contraband. Like, how are you getting tapes in and out? Like, that's what I would think. But no, that's...
And they still tattooed, and there were some pretty talented guys in there, and it would all be all by hand.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd use anything they could for ink, like off of, remember when to make copies of something, you'd put what'd you call it?
Mimeograph?
Yes, you'd put it between the two, and then if you typed it up, you'd have two copies. Well, they'd use like that to make ink.
The carbon.
Yes, that's it.
There was a lot of carbon around that prison too. It was all carbon paper.
Yeah,
like tons of it.
Yeah, it was back then. So they'd use that. Of course, I guess ink from ink pens. I don't know.
That's popular.
Yeah, we had a guard one time got caught getting a tattoo from an inmate, and
Stop it.
Needless to say, he was fired. It was up in the library.
Why would you think that was a good idea?
I don't know.
And it's a terrible tattoo.
So
Stuck with that.
So an inmate could also have a fan.
Okay.
A small
that
fan.
Seems dangerous, but okay. I mean, so do all the heating elements. So I guess I gotta let that go.
And they could have a small rug for inside their cell. And of course, the Muslims were allowed to have a prayer rug. Yeah. Okay.
Did the small rug come from family, or was that a commissary thing?
Actually, sometimes they buy stuff from Sears catalog. They could buy like blue jeans.
Oh.
Yeah, they could buy blue jeans, the small rugs, commissary if they had that kind of stuff in stock. But usually, like the jeans, I think they got Sears catalog.
That's cool.
Yeah, and and at one time, inmates could have records and a turntable and 2 speakers.
Wow.
Now that was going back, and some of the guys that still had them were grandfathered in, and I knew a guy. Okay, I know I sound like Chicago. Hey, I knew a guy. No, but I knew an inmate, and he still was allowed to have his records and his turntable. Now there was a limit. I think it was 10 albums, and I remember this guy vividly. He used to tell me he was related to Tina Turner. Okay, and he even had her on his visiting list. But all the years I was there, she never came. Never. But anyway, so he'd be talking to me, and I was always kind of like a vinyl guy, especially when I was younger. And he says, "Yeah," he goes, "Let me show you." And he pulled out this album, and I'll never forget. It was Johnny Taylor, Disco Lady. Oh. Okay, and he pulls it out. And that record looked like somebody fed their dog off of it. It was all like scratched up. And he goes, "This is a collector's item." I said, "Yeah, really?" But yeah, I remember that. That's my record story. But yeah, he was like the last guy, I think, that still had a turntable and records. And then they decided, okay, no more of that. And they took it. This must have been in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
When they took it.
That's a long time.
But I remember, they took it.
Because they weren't cool.
He was like the last one that had records. And the thing is, you think about it, you can break them and...
Yeah. Oh, I'm shocked they're allowed to have records.
Because they used to make shanks out of toothbrushes.
Yeah.
I mean, but anyway, so other than that, the guys that get their orders filled, if you remember from last week, they'd get their orders filled. You know, they'd call them up one at a time as their orders were bagged, and the guys would get their stuff, and then I'd line them up, and we would go back to the cell house, and then I'd get another line and bring them over, and yeah. But that's the way we do it. We bring over a line of guys at a time.
Was commissary 7 days a week, but one time a week for each
Yeah,
person?
it was one time a week, but it wasn't 7 days. It was open 5.
Okay, 5. Yeah, I was gonna be like, you can't see everybody in one day.
And of course, it was staffed by state employees. Yeah, so like I said, I bring another line in and do it all over again. And the guys had to be an A grade, and of course, they had to have money on the books. And that guy knew he didn't have any money on the books. That one I told you about. He just wanted to come over and hang out.
Just a trip to take.
Yeah, play some spades.
I would too.
But that's pretty much it on the commissary.
All right. Thanks for joining us this week and last week on the Obscurity of Maximum Security with Kara Phillip and most importantly, Mike Johnson. Bye.
Bye.